it's 3:30. We will start the process. I'm sure other people will keep joining in. Thank you for coming in today. And, you know, my name is Sandeep Udiraja. And, if you can hear me, if you're not able to see or, just uh, check your bandwidth and check your audio cords. Before I introduce Giles, who's the founder and president of PMC, which is Personalized Management Coaching, and he's the founder and president based out of Canada. And Coachwala.com is in partnership with PMC in India, bringing some of the best tools which can help us build a coaching culture, and not only coaching culture, but also have a reliable data-based approach. That's our goal. The goal is to share insights and ahas. Some things I'm sure all of you will know. Some things you will discover a little more as we talk about it. And my name is Sandeep Budhiraja, and I've been in the business of development training for last almost 29 years. And I'm a certified coach, and it's my honor and privilege to have Giles with us today. Uh, you know, uh, the the process, I'll just ask Giles to talk to us in a moment. And as we talk about the subject today, we have international people joining us from around the globe. So thanks for being here with us. And before we go forward, Giles, you know, uh,
Yes, hello, Sandeep. Thank you. First of all, thank you to our India partners, Riddhi and Sandeep Budhyaraja at Coachwell, for adapting the PMC as the core methodology in their corporate coaching practice. We're very privileged to have them as our India-based partners. Secondly, congratulations for setting up this webinar. You know what? It's in order to present the importance of a strong coaching culture, how to measure it, and what to do in terms of ensuring that it's properly embedded and sustained. And as we know, coaching culture is an essential component for high-performing organizations. So it's a real privilege and an honor to be part of this webinar this morning. And so I'll let you take over, Sandeep, and look forward to answering any questions for those who are interested in wanting to get my perspective on things.
thanks, Giles, and welcome, and supporting us here. And without ado, we'll launch into the process and talk about what we can. I think there's some background noise which I can hear, and I'm gonna, mute all. Yeah, I think that's slightly better. So great. The question is, what is the outcome? What is the goal which we basically are looking at? So who will benefit from today's webinar is if you are an HR and an L&D professional who's trying to build a coaching culture in your organization, they will benefit. If you are a consultant helping, clients build a high performance culture, these are tools and methods and methodology will benefit you. You can, work with us to get certified to offer these tools and solutions to your clients. If you are a coach and you want to support your clients to transform and perform better, okay, and these are tools which you can use, which are reliable methods which can integrate into your coaching practice. And if you're a manager who's trying to raise the awareness around specific change which they can do at their own team level to move to the next level of performance, you will benefit from there. So it is has a fairly wide variety of appeal as to how you can use these tools, because they are fairly adaptable and and can be applied in variety of situations. So how we going to go forward on this process is we will take some pauses at about 10 to 15 minutes into conversations, and based on that I will also at point in time bring in Giles and ask him to share his experience and perspective, especially from a global point of view. And and you can keep chat putting in your questions if you have any in the chat box. We have Riddhi, who's the key point for the entire webinar. She will keep scanning for the questions which you raise in the chat box, and in the appropriate breaks, she can speak out for the rest of the group. And we'll try and address between me and Giles. We'll try to address the group's question on how whatever the questions might be. So, uh, going forward, what is the goal of this today's webinar is to look at the business case for coaching culture. Why coaching culture is important for organizations in the VUCA world we are in, and how it can support. What is the business case? What is the ROI? What are the dimensions that affect organizations performance, and the patterns that impact leadership, and why is it important? And a brief introduction of tools which PMC brings, which is a data set which can be applied to variety of situation, from coaching, engagement, retention, succession planning, etc., etc. Simple tools which can be used in variety of situations. So that's the background to this as we go forward. Okay, so let's go to the business case. One of the major challenges when we look around the world is to find out, what is the business case for coaching culture? What is the ROI? Uh, these are the top 12 metrics which are used across the world to look at coaching effectiveness. When we talk about, try to define what are the metrics that can help us outline the coaching matrix. What is the retention of key people and key executives in the organization? Are we able to enhance the cross-functional collaboration and cooperation? Can the coach be trusted? Okay, and can he counsel on the sensitive issues to improve team productivity and performance, improve the speed and velocity of decision making as we go forward, align and influence key stakeholders, uh, develop systemically and a strategic perspective in the organization, developing high performance strategies and succession planning, increase decisiveness for poor performers, and fostering culture of engagement and creating a shared vision, and improving executive presence, the confidence, poise, pressure, presentation, engaging, etc., etc. So, this is a very nice study which was done by Sheila Boyson, which was as recent as 2018. That when organizations look at creating coaching culture, these are the drivers, these are the thoughts, these are the perspectives which people have. So we work, in fact, with a lot of organization also where they're trying to achieve some of these or combination of these as we go forward. And uh, and and the point is, why should coaching be integrated to achieve these goals is what we are looking at. So interestingly, coaching is more effective than leadership training because it focuses on identifying ideas, skills, and habits and behaviors that matter most, and provide a structure and a follow up that makes the new learning stick. When we compare coaching to training, because of the personalized nature and the tailor made approach, it tends to create a velocity which is far faster in the process. And that is why it becomes imperative for organizations to invest in case they want to basically look at creating a direct impact on the outcome and performance. Then coaching, we're not saying replace training with coaching, we are saying coaching has to be a complementary tool to do that. And when you're trying to build a culture of coaching, there are things which we look at. There are some key findings that we will share. What is the benefit? What is the outcomes organizations can expect based on the experiences of many other organizations? For example, in 2009, okay, 100% of the respondents indicated the satisfaction with coaching and were confident on a positive ROI, which was there. Another ROI study which was done was close to about 200,000 to half a million dollar, okay, which was looked at by calculating what would it cost to replace an executive, cost related to loss of productivity, gains realized through higher employee engagement. Now, that's the kind of impact which is there. In fact, this is one support system out of consulting, coaching, and many other things which we do. The impact is highest. Of course, we are not saying this is the only way. Okay, at no point in time, it is add-on, and it adds a tremendous value when we are creating the coaching culture. And that is where PMC also comes in, because of the research PMC has done in this domain, based on how having a coaching culture impacts the organizational performance as we go forward. And before we go into the challenges of building a coaching culture, Giles, can you unmute yourself and come in and share a bit of perspective about research and insights developed by PMC in this domain?
Okay, hi, thank you for unmuting me. Well, as you know, PMC has been operating now for several years. We guess our first big client was back in 2004. So since then, we've discovered, whether we're working with banks or working with packaged good companies, consumer products, government, and so on, it's clear that companies that benefit the most from coaching are those who already have a coaching culture in place or intend to put a coaching culture in place. And what that means is that they believe that their leaders should be developing their direct reports. And what we measure, of course, is the relationship between leaders and the direct reports. And that's where the strength of our program really hits the target, is because if we can accurately and reliably measure that relationship, that means we can actually measure also the coaching culture that's in place. And from there, we can determine where the strengths are in terms of the organization and where the areas of development might be, in order to make sure that the coaching culture is sufficiently embedded and sustainable over the long term. Again, working with companies not only in America but in Europe and also in Asia, we find that this is probably the best place to ensure that high-performing organizations work to the level that are expected, and the coaching culture is an essential part of that.
Yeah, that's a great point, and thanks for sharing that perspective. And that also brings in the challenge which organizations and people and practitioners face while trying to build a coaching culture. While we know a lot about coaching, but there's not much out there when we look at are there valid tools to evaluate the coaching culture reliably. So anything which is difficult to evaluate or measure then becomes a problem, because what you can't improve, what you can't evaluate or figure it out. And therefore, in absence of that, the focus tends to be on programs, which is important, nothing wrong with that, rather than on the process of building the culture of coaching. That becomes the second challenge. So organizations, focus on, can I invest in a training program, which is absolutely necessary, except, how do we build it as a process over years? Because building a coaching culture is like building a Rome, and Rome was not built in a day. And it takes time, and it takes information, it takes data to help us achieve that kind of a goal. And and the tools and the process must correlate also. There must be reliability there, and as we look at, and one of the important things and another challenge is, we need sponsorship at the senior level for building the coaching culture. If we don't get that sponsorship, it'll be virtually impossible to bring the change and impact that we are looking at. So these are the common challenges which we notice people face. Anyone would like to add to this list? We'll be happy. Put it in the chat box. We'd love to listen your perspective as we go along. Okay. So these are the things which matter. Therefore, while we have those four challenges, there are four must-haves. Also, to build a coaching culture is what we focus on. So what are these four must-haves is what we are looking at, is that, having a tool that measures and matters, which can look at the impact of coaching and leadership and has a high reliability. And that's an important part, which means uh, if we, in absence of a reliable tool, we can use anything. And there is a huge tendency in this business and industry to dwell on psychometrics. Psychometrics, while are good in getting us an individual profile, however, they do not provide us a data which is broad based, where we can look at a group of people and find out the characteristics of a high performing or a high coaching culture. And that's one of the challenges which exist in the market today. It should be simple and adaptable process, which means anything which is complex and has to be basically tailor made for every organization uh, limits the scalability and relevance to the organization. World does not have time today. We need to move fast, and we need to be able to use tools which can throw reliable data and help us aid in our journey so that we can focus on velocity to create a coaching culture. Third, it should help us. It's important to, when we talk about building a coaching culture, it's important to build a leadership belief system which basically helps direct reports to perform at a higher level. So if your leaders believe that we are not hiring high performers, then there might be a belief in the minds of the leaders or the managers that there are some people in this world who cannot perform at the next level. So anything when we are trying to build a coaching culture, the training team, HR teams, practitioner teams, consultant teams, it's imperative that we help develop this and nurture this mindset that everyone can perform at the next level and everyone is coachable. Uh, in my interaction with the coaches in India and worldwide, we often hear a situation where people say, oh, there are some people whom we can't coach. Now that's a mindset that I have concern with, because it assumes that people cannot improve, they cannot have a better version of who they are right now. And that's a very self-limiting bias or a self-limiting belief of the coach or the people who are coaching, whether it's a leadership or a manager or a coach himself. So one has to really look into that. And therefore, to create a coaching culture or environment or a climate, that belief needs to be fostered effectively. And last is availability and deployment of limited resources for developing people, and also has to be cost effective. Uh, I mean, every organization has limited availability of resources. You not don't have, millions of dollars available for very few people. While we can do that, but we live in a world which is thrifty nowadays. So those limited resources must give us a maximum return on effort or maximum return on investment as we go forward. So these four are the building blocks or core essentials of coaching culture. Okay, and as we go forward, we'll dwell on each one and talk a little more about it. But before that, I will again like to bring in Giles and ask him to share his perspective. And go ahead, and any one of you have any questions, and I will request Riddhi to scan the chat box for the questions, and we'll take it up, in the process.
Well, I think without taking each one individually, clearly when measuring the right things is important, and that's been sort of our contention at PMC, is that organizations tend to measure only skills, but there's other aspects of coaching which are equally important when it comes to being effective in establishing a coaching culture. Things like credibility, and I know you're going to talk about this a little bit later, credibility and motivation, and having those limited resources, invested in the right places. Those are all important areas that need to be measured to ensure that the coaching culture has the proper environment to be embedded and eventually be sustainable over time. And so getting the senior leadership is obviously clearly very important as well, about getting them to believe that coaching is the right investment, because for every dollar they invest, there's enough sufficient research out there that says the return will be over $7 for every dollar. So it makes sense for senior leadership to want to not only talk about the importance of coaching, but also take active and steps to make sure that the people in the organization are able to see the senior manager's commitment to coaching through not only dollars and words, but also in actions.
Thanks, guys, for a great ad. Okay. Any questions? Any, Riddhi? I'm going to unmute you and let me know if there are any questions from the group which we can talk about or address.
So Pooja has a question. Taking the point of everyone is coaching or not, there is always a lot of debate. I have come across few people who are just not open to coaching. Is there any other mode which you can think which can be applied to this?
Okay, that's a great question, Pooja. Thanks for raising that. Okay, so it is a debate, and that's a great point. That whether everyone is coachable or not. So let me give a different view, and I'm going to request Giles also to come in with his vast experience in this domain. Uh, when we ask the question, everyone is coachable, the question assumes that coach is ready, but somebody else, the person to be coached, maybe the follower or the direct report, he or she is not coachable. So that's a big assumption in that particular question. And normally, when somebody manager says, I've got a member in my team who's not coachable or who cannot perform at the next level, uh, it also indicates to the limitation or the belief of the manager or the coach, which he or she has about the person. And in fact, therefore, instead of getting into the debate whether everyone is coachable or not, it's a better idea to say, are people willing to acknowledge that they can perform at the next level? And coaching is a means or a method, one of the means and a method to go there. And how can we achieve that? Giles, would you like to come in on this point?
Well, you're right. It is a debate. I think the word coachable, by itself means that taking somebody from point A and bringing them to point B. But obviously, the person has to have the motivation to want to go, want to improve. And so the question is, what would make them want to improve? Sometimes it's someone's opinion, especially if it's a manager. A bottom-up perspective of who they are and how they operate might be sufficient to motivate them to want to improve. If it's an individual contributor, sometimes it's a coworker that can help them realize that there's some deficiencies here. So it's finding the right source of information that will allow that individual to be motivated. It's difficult to motivate someone else. It's got to come from within. And so the information that they receive, either from a coworker or from someone else, it could be someone else in the organization, it could be a counselor, might be sufficient for them to be motivated to want to improve, then ultimately be coachable. A lot of it has to do with where they get their information from, and is it a respectful source, and if it's someone that they have a high regard for, who suggests them to make a change, then that might be sufficient. Sometimes it's circumstances that will motivate them to want to change or to want to become more coachable. So it's about where the information comes from and how it's presented to allow people to be motivated to want to improve or be coachable.
Yeah, I think that's a great, perspective on the question. I can see that there is a follow-up. Okay, so Pooja is saying, thanks for the perspective. Pooja, thank you for raising that question. That's a great question. So how do we build on each one of those points as we go forward? And we're going to talk to that. Like we said, when you are trying to build a coaching environment, coaching climate, what you measure matters. And what you measure matters here is, we need to be clear about how coaching and leadership needs to be evaluated, who needs to evaluate that, who needs to evaluate what, and that's very important. Uh, and I'll talk to that a little more as to how some of the PMC tools can help us do that. So rather than evaluating or measuring coaching culture based on what what is available out there needs to be a tool or a method, which need to have a high relevance to the goal or the environment we are trying to create, because culture creates the results which we are getting today. So if our today's results are product of our today's culture, then if you want different results tomorrow, then you need to start looking at what is the new culture which you need and what are those dimensions of this new culture. Unless we have a good reading on that, it becomes difficult to find out what needs to improve and therefore how it needs to improve. So that's the first challenge which is there. The second is the process. Does it work and does it work for me? And here, the me stands for the organization or the practitioner or even the coach, who's trying to work with his clients. So, is it complicated? Does it, difficult to read? The data, the tools which we are talking about. No, it must be therefore work in variety of organization, whether you are a one person 2% practitioner, or you are a small to medium sized organization, or you are a large Fortune 500 companies. There needs to be a process of scalability and reliability and adaptation which are there. So these are the second thing which are there. Anything which is very complicated, anything which is difficult to manage is very difficult to implement, and therefore be effective in terms of execution. The third dimension which we talk about is building a leadership belief, and building a leadership belief is all about also creating making what is invisible visible. When I talk about making invisible visible, it means that the leadership team or the leaders need to see, how they are tracking on the culture side. What is the data ping? What is the data collectively talking about? How does the dashboard of a coaching culture look like for their team, organization, work unit, which they are looking at? Okay, and that's an important part, because that when they see the correlation between spending more time on coaching and developing their people and the impact on the results which they're getting, they are able to start see the merit of building a coaching culture. And like I said earlier also, will these tools, or will this basically, spending this kind of energy, money and effort will kill my budgets because they are limited in nature. So something has to be cost effective and cost efficient, more than cost effective, as we say, and must be able to sustain at least over 1 year, 2 year, 3 year time frame, so that we build up a reliable database, so that we can start predicting better correlations between our leadership behaviors, coaching culture, coaching climate, and the outputs that we are delivering in the organization. So these are the four things which are important when we look at it.